I am Kathy, one of the dietitians here at Healthy Weight Management. Today for support group, I wanted to show you two recipes that are healthier versions of maybe higher calorie, higher fat holiday favorites. So the two things I picked, one is a side dish. It is a sweet potato casserole, and I found it on the website Skinny Taste. That's where I found both of my recipes. Actually, there's a lot of really good lower calorie, lower carb options on that website. And so what I did to even further lower the carbs of this is I used butternut squash. So to start, I boiled the butternut squash, and to save time, Giant had the butternut squash already cubed and cut up, so all I had to do was boil it. And there's nothing wrong with using sweet potato. Sweet potato is a good complex carb, lots of nutrients, great source of vitamin A. But the butternut squash is just a lower carb option. So and it mashes up really nice. So I did that, had that done. So it calls for milk, and I used, this is a 1% milk. Calls for some butter, and I used a light butter. It only calls for 3 tablespoons, and that's for the whole thing. Calls for a little bit of cinnamon and nutmeg, so that's going to add a really good flavor. And then you just use a dash of salt. You don't want to use too much salt. And salt's always going to be optional. So now you're going to just mix that together. And this is a little lumpy because I didn't use a mixer, but you can use a mixer and get all the lumps out if you don't like it that way. All right, so you get it all mixed together like that. Then we get a pan. You just spread that out. And then what you're gonna do, you are gonna bake that. Bake it for about 20 minutes uncovered in the oven, and we'll post these recipes so you have them. And then what you do to finish it off, because usually, we like on the top of a sweet potato casserole, we like to have some kind of sweet. So this recipe actually calls for some brown sugar. It uses half a cup of unpacked. So both of these recipes, when I have brown sugar, it's not packed because you'll use a lot less when you don't pack it. But what I did to further decrease the sugar when using brown sugar, I used the Swerve brand. This is a great option. It is sugar-free. It has 4 grams of sugar alcohol, so it's great to bake with, and that's actually pretty low amount of sugar alcohol, so it shouldn't cause any type of intestinal discomfort, but it still gives the sweetness of a brown sugar. And I just found this at Giant, so it's in the regular grocery stores. You just might need to look in the organic section for it. So once you bake this for 20 minutes, you'll then sprinkle this on top, sprinkle the brown sugar all over, and then you just brown it just to crystallize the brown sugars, and then you'll have a nice lower carb, healthy sweet potato casserole. So the next recipe I want to do for you, it's actually a cinnamon apple crisp, again from the Skinny Girl website. Apple pie is a favorite in the fall and for Thanksgiving, which is coming up. So the apple crisp here is going to be a much lower fat and calorie option, doesn't have the crust. So again, to save time, I just bought pre-sliced apples. Now the recipe does call for them to be peeled, but I was short on time, so I didn't peel them. So, and you can usually, do your own apples, peel your own apples if you wish. Go pick some fresh off the trees. Another change I made, it calls for raisins. So instead of using raisins, I actually got some pecans instead, just to add a little bit of texture without the extra sugar. And you can use whatever nuts you would want, and you can use a little bit of raisin. That's not, that's not a problem. But so what you're going to do is you're going to mix it together. So you're going to add some of the pecans. It calls for cinnamon, calls for lemon juice, some cornstarch, and it calls for honey. So again, instead of using honey, which is high sugar, it is natural, but it's high sugar, so I'm trying to look at ways that we can cut back on sugar. I actually have this agave 5. Again, I found it in the organic section. So this is an alternative to any kind of added, sugar, whether it's, I had a recipe I made that called for corn syrup, so I didn't want to use corn syrup. So I actually found this as an alternative, and you can use it as an alternative to honey, as an alternative to regular agave, because this actually only has 5 calories per serving. And this uses stevia. So the recipe called for a 1/4 cup of honey, and I just used 2 tablespoons of this because it is pretty sweet. Find my spoon here. All right, and then we're just gonna mix this all around. And even on just a regular, fall evening, it's something good if you don't want to have to go through all this. If you're just at home and you're really wanting something sweet, you can cut up some apple slices, just a little bit of water in a bowl and put a bunch of cinnamon on them and heat them up. And you have cinnamon apples, and that actually is a pretty nice treat in the fall. And you can even put a dollop of oil on it if you want. All right, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna put this into a container here. I'm gonna dump the apples in. So, and then what you're going to do, you are going to cover this. You're going to cover it, and then you're going to bake it for, about 15 minutes. So cover, bake this for 15 minutes. It's going to soften up the apples and really cook the flavors together. And then when you pull it out, you're going to mix together the rest of the ingredients. So the topping, instead of having the high fat, high carb crust, you're going to do a crumb topping. So you're going to do some oats. You do need a little bit of butter to hold everything together. Cinnamon. You can never use enough cinnamon, lots of cinnamon. And this again is the swerve brown sugar. So we're gonna mix all of that together. So once the apples bake and they're softened, you pull it out, and then you put this on top, and then you bake it again, and you take you bake it again but not covered, you don't cover it, and then it'll be done. So you have 2 healthy options for holiday meals or holiday food items that you can take if you're hosting, if you're going to a party. You can volunteer to bring these.